Gold is the only money that never needed a government to make it valuable. In a century ruled by credit and confidence, one small nation has chosen silence over speculation. It watches the noise of markets, the rise and fall of empires, and acts without fanfare. This is Singapore, a city that never gambles. It calculates, and when it buys gold, it does so for reasons deeper than wealth. Gold, for Singapore, is not just an investment, it is an ideology, a belief that true strength is quiet, and that survival belongs to those who prepare before the storm, not during it. Let us unfold the 7 powerful reasons why this island of steel and glass continues to trust the oldest metal known to man. Reason number 1. To shield its wealth from the fragility of paper. Paper can promise anything. It can promise comfort. It can promise growth. It can promise that value will last forever even when nothing truly does. But promises fade when nations overspend, when debt becomes the language of progress, and when confidence becomes the only thing holding the system together. Singapore understands this better than most. It has watched history closely, the silent teacher of nations. It has seen the mighty crumble, not from war, but from weakness disguised as wealth. The world has witnessed currencies collapse, once proud notes that became worthless overnight. Empires that ruled continents, undone not by armies, but by arithmetic. The German mark in the 1920s, the Asian currencies that broke during the crisis of 1997, the endless printing in the age of quantitative easing. Each collapse told the same story. When money becomes belief, the system becomes faith-based. And faith, when stretched too far, always breaks. Singapore does not mock this pattern. It studies it. It understands that true security is not in what governments promise will hold value, but in what has held value without permission for thousands of years. Gold. Gold does not need endorsement. It does not require a signature from a president or a seal from a central bank. It does not plead for trust, it is trust crystallized. When inflation eats through paper, gold remains untouched. When digital numbers vanish in market crashes, gold still weighs the same. It cannot default. It cannot be devalued by decree. And unlike paper, it does not decay with time. To hold gold is to hold silence, a silence that has outlasted kingdoms, currencies, and even civilizations. Singapore's leaders understand this silence. They understand that the modern financial world is a vast web of promises, nations promising repayment, banks promising liquidity, markets promising infinite growth. But when the thread of trust snaps, only those who hold something real can stand without panic. That is why Singapore builds its foundation not on belief, but on substance. Its gold is not an ornament. It is an anchor, the invisible weight that steadies its currency, its confidence, and its credibility. Because wealth stored in promises is wealth borrowed from time. But wealth stored in gold is wealth protected from time. Gold, for Singapore, is not nostalgia for the past. It is protection against the future. A future where paper may fade, systems may shift, and currencies may fall, but weight, purity, and permanence will always remain the same. Reason number 2. To stay independent between giants. Singapore lives in a neighborhood where even neutrality is a risk. On one side stands America, the keeper of the dollar, the architect of the post-war financial system, the power that decides which currencies rise and which are sanctioned into silence. Its reach extends through markets, its influence through trade routes, and its dominance through the invisible weapon of money. On the other side stands China, the rising dragon, breathing new life into old ambitions. Its currency grows stronger, its trade networks wider, and its influence deeper in the veins of Asia. China does not seek to destroy the order, it seeks to rewrite it in its own calligraphy. And there, between these two titans, stands Singapore, small in land, immense in wisdom. It is a city of bridges, a place where East meets West, not in war, but in transaction. But every bridge must balance too much weight on one side, and it begins to crack. To depend too much on America's dollar would mean surrendering to a system where policy in Washington can ripple across the island's economy. To lean too heavily toward China would risk being pulled into the orbit of an emerging empire still testing its limits. Singapore's survival has always depended on independence, not isolation, but equilibrium. And gold, quietly, is that equilibrium made solid. Gold answers to no empire. It belongs to no ideology. It bends to no interest rate, obeys no sanctions, and respects no borders. It is the neutral currency of history accepted by kings and merchants, by democracies and dynasties alike. By holding gold, Singapore maintains a form of sovereignty no alliance can threaten. It gives the nation an anchor when the seas of global finance grow rough, and the ability to trade freely even when global tensions rise. When the dollar strengthens or weakens, gold remains steady. When the yuan expands or retreats, gold remains silent. It is the quiet shield that lets Singapore move gracefully between powers, trading with both, yet belonging to neither. For a small nation surrounded by giants, gold is not luxury, it is armor. It gives Singapore the power to say, without words, we will not be trapped in your rivalry. We will chart our own course. Each ounce of gold in Singapore's vault whispers that message softly into the silence, a declaration of sovereignty not written on paper but cast in metal. Because in the contest of empires, survival does not belong to those who shout the loudest, but to those who understand how to stay silent, steady, and free. Reason number 3. To reinforce its identity as Asia's safe haven, Singapore's greatest product is not oil. It is not technology. It is not tourism. Its greatest export is trust. In a world trembling under the weight of uncertainty, where currencies shift like sand and governments rewrite their rules overnight, Singapore stands like a fortress, quiet, small, and unshaken. It does not promise riches through risk. It promises stability through discipline, and that has become its most valuable currency. Investors, billionaires, and nations alike look towards Singapore and see something rare, a place where laws do not bend for power and where money is treated with the reverence once reserved for sacred texts. It is a country where contracts are kept, where corruption finds no refuge, and where the rule of law is not a slogan, but a structure built stone by stone. But even trust must be anchored. For in the end, no matter how honest a system is, the world believes most in what it can hold. That is why Singapore holds gold. Not as decoration, not as nostalgia, but as proof. Every bar of gold in its vaults is a message to the world's wealth. Here, value is real. Here, your fortune rests on something more than promises. Gold turns Singapore's reputation into something tangible. It transforms perception into metal, confidence into matter. It tells investors that even if the global system fractures, even if the dollar falters or the digital future wavers, Singapore's foundation will remain solid, weighty, and untouched. Each gleaming bar in the vaults of the Monetary Authority of Singapore is not just metal, it is a silent contract between the nation and the world. A contract that says, your wealth is safe here not because we said so, but because we proved so. That is why, when turbulence hits other economies, capital flows to Singapore like water seeking high ground. The wealthy bring their fortunes not because of the promise of profit, but because of the certainty of peace. In Singapore, safety is not sold in advertisements. It is demonstrated, ounce by ounce, policy by policy, decade after decade. And gold, unchanging, incorruptible, eternal, is the ultimate symbol of that discipline. Because when the rest of the world shouts about growth, Singapore quietly protects it. And when others gamble on the future, Singapore ensures it in gold. Reason number 4. To prepare for the next global monetary shift. Across the world, central banks are moving quietly. Their steps are careful, their words measured, but their actions speak louder than any speech. They are trading paper for substance, dollars for gold, promises for permanence. It is a familiar ritual in the story of empires. When Rome's silver lost its shine, the wise hoarded gold. When Britain's pound began to fade, nations turned their eyes to bullion. And now, as the dollar strains under debt and distrust, the world is again reaching for what cannot be printed for, what still holds weight when faith collapses. Singapore watches this pattern with the patience of a chess player. It does not rush, And it does not react. It observes, it plans, it moves with purpose. Because, in the great game of money, those who prepare early are not trapped by the rules they help write them. Singapore knows that the global system built after the Second World War, the age of the dollar, the dominance of Western credit, is showing cracks. A new order is forming. Digital, decentralized, perhaps regional, perhaps multipolar. No one yet knows its shape, but one truth remains unchanged through every transition: trust must have an anchor. And that anchor, through every age, has been gold. Gold requires no translation. It is the universal language of value spoken by kings and economists alike. It bridges faith and fact, paper and power. It does not ask for belief. It commands it through existence. So Singapore quietly builds its reserves, not as a reaction, but as preparation. It is not buying for the present system, it is positioning for the next. Whether tomorrow's economy runs on digital currencies backed by commodities, or a new basket of regional assets led by Asia, Singapore will be ready. Because the nation already holds the one thing that will matter in every future: tangible trust. By accumulating gold today, Singapore ensures it will not beg for inclusion tomorrow. When the new monetary order is drafted, it will not wait for an invitation. It will already hold a seat at the table, backed not by words, but by weight. Gold is more than metal. It is entry. It is respect. It is leverage in a future that has not yet been named. And Singapore, ever the student of history, knows that when systems shift, it is not the loud who endure, but the prepared. Reason number 5. To hedge against global instability. The 21st century has not been kind to stability. The world once promised order, a global market bound by trade, trust, and treaties. But those promises have begun to fray. Trade wars now replace open commerce. Pandemics have shown how fragile our systems truly are. Sanctions have turned money into a weapon, and alliances once carved in stone now shift like sand. Even the institutions that once defined global certainty now tremble under political strain and economic exhaustion. The world has become a sea of volatility, and in that sea, only the anchored endure. Singapore, small in land but vast in strategy, understands this better than most. It has no mountains to hide behind, no vast armies to project power. Its strength has always been foresight. It knows that neutrality is not safety. Neutrality is discipline, the act of preparing before storms arrive. And gold, timeless and untouchable, is the nation's shield against the chaos of an unpredictable age. Gold fears no virus. It does not freeze under sanctions. It does not bow to politics or propaganda. When currencies fall and banks close their doors, gold remains what it has always been: the measure of real wealth. When borders are sealed, gold still crosses quietly through history's gates. It needs no passport, no permission, only weight and time. That is why Singapore, while others debate, acts. Its accumulation of gold is not driven by fear, but by foresight. It is not a sign of panic, but of patience. Because gold is not about escape, it is about endurance. It allows Singapore to stand firm when others stumble, to remain calm when the rest of the world forgets how. For the wise do not seek safety when the danger has already arrived. They build it, quietly, while the world is still distracted. And in that silence, Singapore has built something remarkable: not just reserves of metal, but reserves of peace. When the next crisis comes, whether economic, digital, or geopolitical, Singapore will not shout. It will not scramble. It will simply endure. Because gold does not panic. It only waits. Reason number 6. To preserve discipline across generations. Singapore's greatest miracle was never its skyscrapers. It was never its glittering skyline, its soaring GDP, or its gleaming ports. Its true miracle was, and still is, discipline. When it began, Singapore had no natural wealth to boast of. No oil beneath its soil, no vast farmlands, no ancient empire to inherit. It was born in scarcity, and yet it refused to be defined by it. From swamp to skyline, from hunger to abundance, it grew not through chance, but through restraint. It mastered the art of doing less, but doing it perfectly. Every policy, every investment, every decision was made with a surgeon's precision, and a monk's patience. And that same spirit of discipline is what gold represents. Gold cannot be printed when budgets fall short. It cannot be multiplied with a keystroke or inflated by political desire. It is immune to impatience. It moves only with time. In a world addicted to growth, gold demands temperance. It rewards nations that think not in quarters, but in decades. It favors the patient, the deliberate, and the wise. For Singapore, gold is not just a reserve, it is a reminder that real wealth is not created by noise, but by balance, that progress without prudence leads to collapse, and that prosperity without patience is only the illusion of success. Each bar of gold resting in Singapore's vaults is more than metal. It is a silent teacher. It speaks to the next generation of leaders, whispering lessons the markets often forget. Do not chase what shines for a moment. Build what lasts beyond your lifetime. Gold does not tempt greed. It demands governance. It does not inspire excess. It enforces order. By holding it, Singapore passes down a golden philosophy that discipline is the highest form of strength, and that endurance, not excitement, is what builds nations that last. Every ounce in its reserves is not just wealth, it is wisdom cast in metal, a golden echo of the nation's founding spirit. That true power is not in abundance, but in control. Reason number 7. Because gold is the purest symbol of stability. When the world panics, nations print. When Singapore plans, it buys gold. In an age where fear dictates policy and quick fixes masquerade as strategy, Singapore walks a different path, the path of stillness. Where others react, it reflects. Where others gamble, it guards. Gold is not a tool of profit. It is a test of philosophy. It does not promise yield. It promises continuity. It does not dazzle. It endures. It does not speak loudly. It simply remains. For Singapore, gold is more than metal. It is identity made tangible. It reflects everything the nation was built upon: calm strength, quiet certainty, and the relentless pursuit of permanence in a world addicted to change. Each bar stored deep within its vaults is like a line of scripture in the nation's creed, silent, sacred, and unbreakable. It does not shout its value. It radiates it through time. Gold is the mirror through which Singapore sees itself, not in the noise of markets, but in the silence of endurance. It whispers the same truth that built this island from nothing. Stability is not given. It is earned. Wealth is not movement. It is stillness perfected. Every piece of gold beneath Singapore's soil represents faith, not in fortune, but in foundation. It anchors a philosophy that outlives trends and outlasts empires. Because while others chase the winds of speculation, Singapore builds its shelter in permanence. And that, perhaps, is the greatest secret of its success. When the world trembles, Singapore stands still. When others seek safety, Singapore already has it. And at the heart of that stillness, shining softly beneath layers of stone and steel, lies the one truth that never changes: gold, the purest symbol of stability. The modern world has learned to trust what glows on screens: numbers rising, charts flashing, credits expanding. Fortunes are now measured in pixels, and confidence is traded in code. But Singapore trusts what can still rest in the hand: heavy, silent, eternal. Its faith is not in the noise of markets, but in the quiet weight of something that time itself has tested. Its gold speaks softly to those who listen. It does not boast. It does not move. It simply exists as it has for empires long gone and for nations yet to rise. It whispers truths the modern world too often forgets. That value is not noise. That power does not always shout. That security is not built on motion, but on meaning. And that the future, the real future, will not belong to those who spend the loudest, nor to those who promise the most. It will belong to those who prepare in silence, to those who understand that in a fragile world, the quiet weight of gold is more than wealth. It is wisdom made visible. For Singapore, that wisdom has become its compass, a silent promise to its people and to time itself, that long after the lights of speculation fade, and long after the world forgets its screens and numbers, something will still gleam beneath the island's soil, unchanged, unbroken, eternal.